Well, look, Vinny, I appreciate you taking some time to talk. You've got a big show this Friday at the West Town in Bay City. It's been a few years since you've been up this way. I know you play Flint and Detroit all the time, but it's been a couple of years since we've seen you in Bay City.
Yeah, agreed. I recall doing one show at the West Town, and I'm guessing it was well over 10, 12 years ago. I remember the room. I remember the club. And I'm happy that the room is still around because a lot has changed over the last couple of years, understandably. So we're happy to be there. We're pumped up about the gig.
Yeah, we're excited to have you back, and we're celebrating more than 25 years of Rotting Pinata, nearly 30 years of Sponge. Could you imagine back early 90s when you started this band, when you released Rotting Pinata in 94, that you'd be here 25, nearly 30 years later, still out playing gigs, still releasing music? Could you even imagine that back then?
Not in the least. Absolutely not. Because I mean, when I think about like what songs that we have that are staples at radio right now, let's just talk about radio. When we wrote Plowed, we weren't thinking about like what's going to work good on the radio. And when we wrote Molly, the same kind of thing. It's not like we're going, this is going to be a slam dunk at radio. So I go, God, those songs are still on the radio, and yet we weren't interested in writing for the radio. So to answer the question simply, we have no idea how this happened.
Yeah, it's always kind of a lightning in a bottle scenario. I mean, you Sponge sort of hit at the right time when, grunge had become the biggest thing in the world and alternative rock is sort of taking off. And you sort of come out at the exact time that you need to release Rotting Pinata when all that stuff is hitting, and you sort of get to ride that wave.
However, I'm not sure we were smart enough to calculate what the right time could have been. You know what I mean? So it's just, I go, wow, like, I think lightning in a bottle is accurate. However, I go, we certainly weren't planning on, we certainly couldn't calculate, and we certainly couldn't go, now is time to ride the coattails of something. We were just like, this is what we're doing, and let's go.
What do you credit the longevity of Sponge to? I mean, there's a ton of bands that have come out in the last 30 years, bands that you guys played shows with in the 90s. Bands that you played shows with 5 years ago that aren't around anymore, and yet you're still out there. You're still out gigging, playing shows in West Virginia, in Ohio, in Michigan. What is it about Sponge that has kept you doing this for so long?
I think a lot of folks would think that Sponge had 2 records out. So Rotting Pinata and Wax Ecstatic. And after that, we just kind of disappeared. What folks don't know, we have like 9 studio records out. After Wax Ecstatic, we released New Pop Sunday, which was our 3rd record. And we kept releasing records steadily after that. And we kept working. We kept, doing gigs. We were out there on the road and active the whole time. So I think it's just the willingness has kept us alive, the willingness to go out there and do it. And do it under almost any circumstances, which, some bands, they go, we got to have a bus, or we're just going to fly a plane to the gigs. And Sponge is like, no, we'll get in the van and we'll drive 12 hours to the East Coast and do shows, and we'll drive, 12 hours out west or whatever it is. I mean, Sponge is willing to get out there and still do it any way we possibly can.
There are so many baby bands that get started and they think, man, we can't wait to be in a bus. And they don't take into account how expensive it is to have a bus.
Well, expensive in many ways. Yeah. I mean, the whole idea about going on the road and touring and making any kind of money, like, I don't think I ever made any money on the road, even when Sponge was like, in the heyday. Because we had so many expenses, and you talk about the expense of a bus. And when you talk about like everybody in separate hotel rooms and business managers and agents and all that stuff, it just tears through every dime of money you make. So it's like when you can do that and go, you know what, we're going to scale back a little bit, then you might make some money. But yeah, I never made money on the road back in the day because it was expensive. So for some of these young bands, although I think a lot of young bands do it right, you know, they're out there selling their merch, they're out there in a van and a trailer, and they're really kind of going bare bones and they're making it work.
How different is the music industry now? It's been 30 years almost, you know, since Rotting Pinata came out, Wax Ecstatic came out. We're coming up on 25, 30 years for those albums. And the music industry is vastly different now than it was. From someone who's in it, what are the things that you notice have changed drastically in the last 30 years?
Number one, we were just talking about the live environment. And this is what messed up a lot of people during COVID, a lot of musicians during COVID. We really don't make money selling records anymore. So, and the streaming thing is certainly a source of income for a lot of bands. I mean, it's, you know, it is such a minute amount of money.
It's like fractions of a penny for a stream.
Oh, a stream is like, yeah, you just go, you know, it takes millions of streams to make money, you know, but I mean, so we're not making money selling albums like we used to. And radio stations aren't involved with labels the way they used to be. So it's like making money means making money on the road. You know, there used to be like you would sign a record deal, then you'd sign a publishing deal, then you'd sign a merchandising deal and all that kind of stuff. And these days it's pretty much like, get out there, get out on the road. And if you're lucky, you know, you got a ton of streams coming in, or maybe you got some action on YouTube, you know, like our buddy, we were talking to Cliffy D, our buddy from Upchurch, and, you know, YouTube phenomenon. That's what's different today. I don't think back in the day, there would have been any way possible that somebody would have been some kind of social media giant back years ago. We had MTV, we had alternative radio, and we had record labels. These days, those things aren't big in the equation for the success of rock bands.
When you look back at your career, 25, 30 years at this point, is there anything that you would have done differently, you know, back in the early 90s or even up until now? Is there anything you look back on and say, man, I wish I would have done something. I wish I would have done that differently. Wish I would not have done that.
Well, I mean, that's a great question. What I would have done was streamlined how we traveled, streamlined how we were out there on the road doing live gigs. Because, you know, we could have made a shit ton of money back in the day by just doing it smart, instead of doing it like everybody else did it, because we felt that's how we had to do it, being out on the road. You know, you need all these perks and you need all these special things to be out there on the road, when in essence, you know what, you need like a pair of pants, some good shoes, a van that really kicks ass, and maybe a trailer. But, you know, and a band that's willing to do that kind of thing. And we've always had great times like that. And we could have made a ton of money. So I would have certainly changed that situation. You know, who needs the bus?
How long have you guys had the van that you currently have? Because I know some bands roll the same van for years and years and years.
We've had vans. It's not like a van, you know, I mean, and we've had vans. So it's like, to me, I go, if you do it right and you route it right and you're willing to, you know, do some driving, you know, the price of gas stinks these days for any touring band. Is so difficult, not to mention just like the price of hotels. It's all going up. But I still look at it and I go, if we could have done it that way back then, we would have made some money on the road. But back then we were making money perhaps through radio spins, record sales, and some publishing and maybe some merchandising deals. But I go, we could have made a lot of money on the road. That's what I would have changed.
We talked a little bit about the show at the West Town in Bay City coming up on Friday. You guys played some massive shows back in the 90s and have continued to play big shows over the years, shared the stage with Metallica and Soundgarden, Faith No More. Was there any point as you're sharing the stage with some of those bands where you look at who you're playing with, you look at who's on the bill and you're like, whoa, this is pretty nuts. Did you ever get starstruck at all with some of the bands you're sharing the stage with?
Well, always. Yeah, absolutely. Always. And probably a couple of the groups, like when I think about, Alice in Chains, it's hard to be starstruck when they're such great guys, you're starstruck, but you're going, these guys are just kick ass. Iggy Pop, I was starstruck by, Lux Interior from the Cramps, starstruck by Lux. And of course, like Buzz from the Melvins, starstruck. You just go, and maybe he's like an anti-star or something. You would go, I'm not a star, but just blown away. Certainly, meeting David Bowie was a big deal, but starstruck under those circumstances, yeah.
Sponge, of course, is the band you're most well known for. I should mention that Sponge released a brand new album recently, but you're a dude that has a lot of irons in the fire. I know Dave Grohl, they talk a lot about Dave Grohl being like the busiest dude in the world with books and movies and whatever. But you're also, you have Sponge, and then you have Crud, and you have the Orbitsons. Then there's Lucid, which you just started up recently with David Ellefson, just released a new album not too long ago. How did you guys get hooked up with that? How did that project start?
Do you have that record?
I don't.
That record is damn good. That project, man, was weird. The fellas reached out to me, or Drew, the guitar player, reached out to me via the Sponge website. And it's the weird thing is, like, if I wanted to write with, like, Uncle Cracker or somebody, I wouldn't hit Matt up through his band website. I would go, well, I'm going to talk to his manager, but I ended up answering the email. And I really wasn't too clear on who was doing what, but I was like, send me the songs. And they sent me a couple songs. And after, 30 more tunes they sent me, we came up with a final 9-song album, which I just think the record is fantastic.
Yeah, I know you guys released a single. It's crazy that the internet can bring people together like that. That somebody just decided, you got to imagine they're going through a list of different people they think maybe could be perfect for this project, and they just send an email, and now you've got a 9-song EP out. That's crazy how that all happens.
That it's just so strange. It's really that simple. But I got to tell you, I think that the talent within the group, what the fellas sent me, it was very easy to write to that music, and the quality of the demos and the quality of the ideas really made it easy for me to do what I had to do.
So not only do you have Sponge and Crud and the Orbits and stuff you're doing, the Lucid, but you also recently made an appearance. ICP just released an album like 2 or 3 weeks ago on Halloween, and as you look through the track list, there's 2 guests on there, and one of them is Vinnie from Sponge. I know everybody in Michigan knows ICP's connection. They're, you talk about music in Michigan, it's Bob Seger, it's Alice Cooper, it's Sponge, it's Kid Rock, it's Pop Evil, it's Eminem, it's ICP. How do you get hooked up with Violent J and Shaggy 2 Dope?
No, we've known those fellas for probably since the beginning of Sponge and the beginning of ICP. And it's so strange when you think about just the awesome work ethic that ICP has, the genius, I think, of how they have done things in their career, the music and the self-reliance. To me, is just stunning. So people certainly, when they think of Detroit, they're like, Bob Seger, Kid Rock. They think of, like these days, Greta Van Fleet. ICP is like a juggernaut of music, of entertainment, of energy, of ideas, and just smart music business. that I go, you know, I'm proud to be on the record. They reached out to me back in the spring about this heart and soul idea. And so Violent J was just like, you know what, we got to rewrite the lyrics, but I got this idea. We should do this tune. And I'm like, I'm all about this tune. I want to work on this song. And so we did. And I know that the track turned out fantastic. I'm so proud of it. And there's definitely some tips of the hat, if you will, to Sponge throughout the new ICP record.
Yeah, it just came out on Halloween, so you can check that out. You can check out the Lucid album. The Sponge album is out there as well. And you've also got this project called Monster Joe that just played a show back in September. And that's you and that's, you know, guys from Better Than Ezra and the Nixons and Deep Blue Something. All these guys came together and you guys are playing. You're out there, you know, doing shows with those guys as well. I'm curious, how do you keep all of this straight with all this different stuff here? Like if ICP calls you to do a show, can you go perform that song and then do a crud show the next night? How do you keep all this stuff straight, man?
I would do it. Yeah, I would just say yes to all of that, you know, and I just think it's, you know, it's a great time. And, you know, all of these groups, all of this music is done for the right reasons. You know what I mean? Nobody's sitting around going, how much money can we make from this? Blah, 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 all this kind of stuff, man. We're all doing this stuff because we just really love to do what we do. It's not like Violent J was going, hey, man, you know, I'll tighten you up with some loot to sing on this song. All I'm thinking of, man, what a great idea. Let's crush this shit and make it great. And that's what we did. So, you know what? I wouldn't be surprised if Sponge is out at Gathering of the Juggalos this coming summer. There's a lot of great possibilities. Who knows? Maybe Crud could even be involved in the Gathering. It just could be great. And that's what it's always all about. Like when you asked me about the longevity of Sponge, who would have thought that songs like Plowed and Molly could still be on radio today? It's not anything we planned on back in the day. We just wanted to try to do good work. That was it.
And now you're on a song with ICP and yeah, maybe sharing the stage at Gathering of the Juggalos, and you'll be on stage at the West Town in Bay City coming up on Friday. Mentioned it's been a minute since you guys have played this area, since you played the West Town and the Pig gig years ago. And Michigan is always a state that when bands think about states they need to play, they want to play, Michigan is always high on that list of a state that kind of keeps rock alive when other states maybe get skipped over. What do you think it is about Michigan that, you know, keeps rock alive when other states seem to struggle? What is it about the blue collar nature of Michigan that keeps bands like Sponge playing shows here all the time?
It's a history of the rich musical history that is just really undeniable when you consider the great legacy of rock and roll, the great legacy of Motown, the great legacy of, you know, blues music, of rap music. It's just undeniable. And I think it's always been a benchmark. You know, why would bands from Europe want to play in Detroit back in the day? You know, bands all over the world knew about the MC5. They wanted to come here to play the Grandy Ballroom, you know, Zeppelin, The Who, all these groups, man. So Detroit was just like the tip-top benchmark, man. You know, Mitch Ryder, Bob Seger back in the day, even Tad Nugent with the Amboy Dukes. I mean, Alice Cooper, for God's sakes, you know. Iggy, everybody wanted, it's just all about Detroit. And to me, that's like the gold standard. So the gold standard still exists today. You know, when you got guys like Eminem that have changed the world with what he's done, and make no mistake, you know, you can say he's a white kid that rapped, but when you're in the inner city Detroit and you see people of color rocking Eminem's music for no other reason than it's good in the inner city, you know he's the real deal. So I just sit and go, this is the gold standard here in Michigan.
When people hear that a band has been around for 30 years, I'm sure their first thought is how much energy can a band that's been around for 30 years still have? But you guys still bring it every single night, and fans will see that Friday night, even though you guys have been doing this for a long time. And there are plenty of bands that have been doing it for a long time. I mean, the Stones just played Detroit a couple of nights ago, and Mick Jagger still performs like he's, he hasn't been doing it for nearly 50 years. You guys still have that same energy every single night that you guys play.
Absolutely. Because you're doing what you love to do. Mick, I wish I was there Monday, man, but it's just like, I've seen the Stones before. I think they're fantastic. And Mick does it because he loves to do it. So does Keith. God rest. God bless Charlie Watts, may he rest in peace.
Yeah, it would have been a hell of a show to see at Ford Field, and it will be a hell of a show Friday night at the Westtown in Bay City. We're excited to have you guys back in town. Tickets are still available. You can get them at Lucky's Bar next to the Westtown. You can buy them night of show. Eventbrite.com. They're on sale there as well. And of course, you got to see everything that Vinnie has going on. I mean, mention the album from Sponge and everything else that you're doing. There's plenty of Vinnie stuff out there that people can find. You're a busy guy.
Matt, when you bring all that stuff up, it makes me tired, man. I got too much going on.
Well, make sure you go rest before Friday night, please.
I'll do my best, Matt. Thank you.